La, 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 la. Boom. There we are. All right, gremlins. I have so many gremlins. All right, let me put this one here too then. All right. And we already have a bot in chat. So, anyways, we have a bot in chat. But anyways, let me start this over again. Hello and welcome back to the Designer's Den. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. I have forgotten how to uh, da, 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 manage moderation settings. There we go.
AI is ruining everything.
All right. Yeah. Start again. All right. Sweet. Yeah. A mess today. But very excited today to interview Opti here with Fraggin Unicorns. They have just launched their Kickstarter today for their game Subversion. It's a tabletop role-playing game, and it is cyberpunk. So, which kind of makes sense, as Opti comes from, Shadowrun, right? So,
Yes.
you know what? I can tell you a lot about him, but let him introduce himself. Hi, Opti. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very nice.
All
to
right,
meet
now
you.
I can't hear you.
I think we'll get it right. I'll wait for you. It's proper to wait for the host.
All right. How about now? Okay. Yeah, I can. The sound was going through OBS all along, but not to me. Yeah. Mhm. Ah. Hold on. Sorry.
Silenced.
Now they can't hear you. All right. Is it really even a live stream though if you don't have audio issues? All right, take from the top. Hi, who are you?
Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, from the top. My name is Opti, and I've been primarily writing in the Shadowrun arena, which is a cyberpunk fantasy role-playing game. I started off as a podcaster in that space, doing an in-character Shadowrun lore podcast, and then eventually started working for Catalyst Game Labs, the producer of Shadowrun, doing some splat books and some adventures and whatnot. And I still do that on the side too. But along the way, we started questioning, for some friends of mine and I started questioning how we wanted to exist in the gaming space. There was all sorts of stories at that time, like 2019. I don't know if
Yeah.
there was like just so much awful stuff blowing up in the scene during that time, and we just thought, like, what? I guess the idea was, how can we be a presence in this space, even if we're not big, even if we're not like revolutionary? What if we just sort of paid people on time, and what if we just sort of like didn't harass people, and
You
what if we
know,
were just kind?
surprisingly, there is demand for that sort of thing.
Right, and that's sort of why we existed and why we started doing what we were doing. um Around that time, Shadowrun had wanted to do a sort of miniatures game, with metal miniature, plastic miniatures, and you roll dice and you fight each other, but they sort of never got around to doing it. And so that was the sort of first thing that Fragging Unicorns decided to do, is like, if we wanted this game, we wanted to play Shadowrun with little miniatures, surely somebody else does. And so we made a cyberpunk fantasy skirmish minis game called Gangs of the Undercity, and
Hmm.
that on Kickstarter, I believe it was 2019 or 2020. Time has dilated, and I can no longer
It
keep track.
was it was right before, right at the end of the before times, if I recall correctly, because I remember
Yes,
seeing that floating around.
yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. It was like right before things went completely wacky, and we were like, no, surely this will be an easy project to fulfill, and shipping won't be a problem. And then it's like, oh my god, everything's gone wrong. But yeah, we we
Yeah.
got the game out. We finally did that. And
I can't
then
imagine trying to ship miniatures during that entire supply chain mess.
you know what? Like trying to get plastic, trying to get metal, trying to get anything to make miniatures out of during that time was super expensive, and it was impossible. But we did it. Like when I say impossible, it was just
Well,
not impossible. We did it.
working
Um,
for a company that does a lot of miniatures, it's still pricey.
yeah, it was hard. It was certainly a beating when we like went from like, oh man, we've made a lot of money, to, oh man, I
We
think we can
spent a lot
fulfill
of
this.
money.
Right.
Yeah.
And then last year we did a Kickstarter for a game called Misspent Youth: Fall in Love, Not in Line. And Misspent Youth is a game of teenage rebellion in a messed up future. And so we inherited that from Robert Bowl Games. He got out of the industry, and he's like, ah man, I just don't want to do this anymore. And we're like, hey, we totally love this game, Misspent Youth. And he's like, here, have it, do it. And I was like, yes. So we put out Fall in Love, Not Online, which sort of streamlines the game for people who have never played narrative games or never played RPGs in general. It just sort of like throws you in and teaches you, how to do it, and teaches you how to be a revolutionary along the way. That went well, and we just fulfilled that one at the end of last year, and now we're back for our third Kickstarter, and it is Subversion, a
Which is
cyberpunk
a
fantasy.
big book.
Yes.
Hardcover, 250 pages, or PDF if that's your jam.
Mm-hmm.
After all, the digital world, we can't not have digital components of something in a cyberpunk game. But I mean, you've already kind of, what makes it different is that the lore isn't quite so baked in. It does still use the D6, a D6 dice pool system. Is
Right.
that significantly different from the mechanics in Shadowrun, or did you try to make it somewhat similar?
No, it's actually totally different. Like, does
Okay.
have
Aside from
um
just D6s.
it's D6s, right? Like, yeah, but the mechanic that we were going for, coincidentally, it could have been D6, could have been anything. Um, but I had a bunch of D6s in my house
I
already.
don't know why you had a bunch of D6s in your house.
To play
Just
Shadowrun,
just
you've got a whole room
fistfuls?
full of D6s somewhere. But yeah, our Shadowrun does a thing where like you add your attribute and your skill together. You roll that many dice, and you take fives and sixes. For ours, actually ends up being a lot closer to D&D, except instead of rolling D20, you're rolling a number of D6s and taking the highest three that you roll. So the target numbers are very close to D&D, and the way that you end up adding your attribute onto your roll, and the rolls tend to be a little bit more similar.
Yeah. That sounds
But
that
what
sounds that's pretty straightforward. So I like that already. That's not a high barrier for brand new players who haven't
right?
played any TTRPG, which is the audience that I try and keep in mind nowadays because it's the biggest potential audience out there.
Yeah, yeah. It actually gives us a really nice for math nerds. There's a really nice probability curve where in D&D, like if you roll a D20,
It's
every
swingy.
20th dice, right? You're gonna fail really hard. Right? You could be the best swordsman ever, and then you roll a one, you're like,
Well,
oh no.
that's not quite how the statistics work out, but yeah.
Right, but yeah, but still, you're gonna fail a lot of the time, even if you're the best, right? But the way this system works is you add more dice to your roll, and you're always taking the highest three no matter what. But what ends up happening is you get really good at something. You might roll, 9 dice, and that means it's
You're
going to be really, really
exceedingly
hard to
skilled
miss.
at that task.
Yes, and you're gonna be doing critical hits a lot more often, right? So sort of commensurate with your ability. So yeah, it gives a nice probability curve for investing in your skills.
I really like that. All right, so said the game is called Subversion. I did not have time to get the artwork kind of pulled aside to pop something up here, but you kind of got your 3 points that you're selling it on: magic, technology, and rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, we are still fighting the man, much like
Yes.
every Shadowrun cyberpunk game,
Yeah.
both. But yeah, so you know, um, obviously you had a lot of inspiration from the work that you've already done, but how did you come up with kind of the world behind it here? So you've got the ancient Babylonian Empire, and that has kind of converted into Neo Babylon,
Right.
urban mega sprawl. Do
Yeah.
you just love ancient history?
I actually do. Yes, Mesopotamian history is like one of my jams. So while I was doing research for this, I was like, oh man, could this have been any better? But there's also so like the inspiration for the lore came sort of two different ways. Um, Obviously, there's the sort of Shadowrun-esque where like magic has come back into the world after not being there. We wanted to do something different. That we didn't want to just sort of like come up with another reason why magic all of a sudden showed up. So we thought like, what if magic has always been around? Like, what would it
Hmm.
look like if you took a fantasy setting and instead of, sort of just in putting that onto a normal, or a futuristic setting, what if we sort of assumed that it had always been magical and then fast forwarded that fantasy setting, right, 2,500 years in the future, right? So what if you took like, um, D&D and then like sped it up to 2,500 years later? Like, what would that look like? So we approached the world building that way, and then we asked ourselves, like, what's a this is how I did it. What's a cool name for a city? And I was like, Neo Babylon, because like Babylon has a lot of sort of
It's
reference points in our culture about
yeah,
being sort of the man and oppressive.
the
And so I thought,
the walls of Babylon, the gardens of
yeah,
Babylon, the
right.
aristocracy, and all of the rules. That was where mhm.
Yes, exactly. I don't know what you're going to say, but I'm sure it was right on.
I cannot think of so the writs, the laws, the ancient system of law came into
Oh,
being in Babylon.
yeah, the Code of Hammurabi. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yes,
So
that's the
yeah,
word.
and lots of like reggae and ska like has Babylon as a sort of like stand-in for empire, and there's like a lots of like beat down Babylon and Babylon must fall like language. So we just thought like that would be a cool name for a city, and then worked backwards and said like, okay, if this is Neo Babylon, right? Like how did it become Neo Babylon? Why was that important? And then we decided like, what if we just took Babylon and ancient Babylon and
It
said like,
never
what if
died. Instead, it just
yeah,
kept progressing. And I
yeah,
really like that we're now talking about ancient arcane powers because as the saying goes, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So,
mm-hmm.
we've taken this ancient magic and, who knows where the origins of it really came from. And we've pulled that all the way forward. So basically, it is already sci fi just on that. But then we layered in, well, for people who don't have magic, how could they replicate those things? That's what technology really is. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
and
and in fact, that's like a core theme in Subversion is now we have this technology that can rival what magic has always done, and it's sort of erasing the gap between the magical haves and have-nots, and whereas the people on the bottom are using new technology to sort of push back and to regain some ground that has been lost. So yeah, absolutely one of the big themes in Subversion.
all right, and we got a question from Mark Songs in the chat. When I talked magic, technology, rebellion, want to know is rebellion an attribute like a stat? So that's actually a great question. Like, what are the attributes, the stats that we've got for this game? Like, are we going with Moxie, Chutzpah?
uh, we were really, really tempted, but we saved that more narrative stuff for Misspent Youth, where those sort of things are attributes. But Yeah, we have a pretty standard attribute. Like the attribute system is not going to blow anybody away with this newness. So we've got like uh brawn, we've got agility, wit, will, charisma, and the other one that I can't think of right
Some
now.
stamina.
What is it? It's right there. Wit, will, oh, awareness.
Oh, awareness.
Yeah, which I
There you
did
go.
not have when I was answering that question. Um, but yeah, so rebellion is not a stat, but it is baked into the system, right? So every community you're a part of, and every group of PCs is part of a community, will have an authority or multiple authorities that they're pushing back on. And part of the whole core gameplay um, drive is for you to gain ground against your authority or lose ground, against that authority who's always sort of pushing down on you and making your life more difficult. So um, you're always uh, gaining ground, I guess, when you're pushing back on the authority, and you're losing ground if you're not.
All right, and then one of the mechanics that you do have in there that I like and that I've seen similar things is the grit system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a kind of limited resource that you've got that lets you just kind of push beyond your normal capabilities. And I think especially when we're talking about rebellion and undermining the thing, that's kind of exactly the thing that you'll want to see is that little extra oomph that goes in there where you're like, mm, you know. I I really believe in this cause. I'm willing to push through my difficulties and failures to make this happen.
Yeah.
Uh,
My
and
therapist says that grit is the thing that allows us to keep going when there's no reason that we should keep going. Some people have a lot of grit and some people don't, and you can't tell until the
ah,
pressure's put on you, right?
some people are neurodiverse and some people are yes, typical.
Right? So
No, I think I do love that though you so much because I am neurodiverse and like that's one of the things too that I was reading an article on. It's really interesting about how like a lot of people talk about running on empty and it's with so many people who are neurodiverse you don't realize when you're on empty and you keep going anyway and then you're like past burnout and you're like
yeah.
but I did the thing.
Yeah. No, and so that's exactly what we wanted to capture, right? As somebody who's neurodivergent myself, as somebody who has had to do a lot of therapy to work out their stuff, I thought like we're gonna put this in a game, right? Like it's not just
Yeah.
about fighting, but like what if you also had things that were important to you, right? And when you were able to achieve those things, you felt better, and you were able to achieve more things. You were more comfortable in your own skin. You were mentally healthier. And if you didn't, right? If your goals and your dreams shattered in front of you, or if you were run down, or if you just, were at your wits' end, or if you were beat up, you are just not going to be as on top of things as you were before. And so grit allows you to push past your limits. But when grit is gone, you're done, right? It's not like you're dead, but you're out of it. You're
Ex-
out of the action. You can't do
yeah,
anymore.
it's time for a depression nap.
We don't call it depression nap in
No.
subversion, but we do. Yeah, you're busted, right? Like you're
Yeah,
essentially out of the
you're exhausted for a
action.
bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but the way, and this is kind of fun. The way that you get your grit back is by indulging yourself in your impulses, right? So every PC is going to have an impulse, something that they can do that's not quite healthy. There's other ways to do it in a healthier way,
Yeah, we
but
got our
there's not
vices.
quite
Yeah.
right. Your vices, right? So you can indulge yourself in drugs or alcohol or like sort of excessive behavior. You can be extremely arrogant and proud to the people, right? You can sort of put on a mask and just like push everybody away. But there's a number of impulses that you have that if you complicate the story, right, you're going along and your friends all say like, hey, I want to go this way, and you say no, my impulse is leading me to the bar to drink away my troubles, right? If you use that impulse, you will get grit back, right? And so that's your mechanical benefit for sort of complicating the drama of the story with the impulses that your character has.
And I like that too. So you've got um, not pros and cons. Good things can happen, mechanically, if you hold true to your values, as well as if
Mm-hmm.
you kind of hold true to your impulse. So that really drives a lot of narrative in the story because
Right.
you're going to see a lot of character development, character growth. So it's very much about the characters themselves,
Hmm.
which dovetails well into the next thing that I wanted to talk about,
Cool.
is that the characters themselves are, vastly different from one another. There's, despite it being, like you said, a little bit less bogged down in everything. You still have a number of skills, which you
Hmm.
actually have packaged them up into, I think you called them clusters.
Yeah,
Uh,
paradigms. Yeah,
yeah.
clusters of abilities. Yeah. So yeah, we do have like skills, like this your typical science skill or ranged
Yeah.
combat skill, like very straightforward, things that you can be good at. But if say you have some two, three people who are like, oh, I want to be good at ranged combat. Yeah, okay, great. They are not going to end up looking the same because the paradigms system means that they get to choose how their character becomes unique. So paradigms are essentially kind of equivalent to like a D&D class, except they're free, right? Like the class abilities are free. You can take from whatever you want. Like you could multi-class, I guess, if that's the word you want to use, as much as you want, and you don't have to be certain levels to take the abilities, right? You pay for them and you get them. So, like for example, the militaire or the ranged combat paradigm for the gunslingers that these three gunslingers can all have 4 skill in ranged combat, but one of them will pick the quick draw ability from the military paradigm. Another one will pick the eagle eye ability, right, which means they can sort of take an extra action and aim or whatever. And the other one is going to pick close combat, which means that they can pistol whip people. Like so, they're all going to sort of grow in different directions and feel very unique, despite all three of them being ranged combat characters. So paradigms essentially function as clusters of abilities that are similar, right? Like gunslinger or brawler or artist or criminal, right? Like so, they're just
Criminal
clusters of abilities. But
mastermind. Yeah.
yeah, like we absolutely have mastermind as one, and we also have criminal as another. So you
Oh.
could totally be a criminal mastermind if that's what you wanted to. And even though you do that, you could still make a character or 3 characters that all feel very different, despite all 3 of them taking paradigm choices from criminal and mastermind.
Right. So, Mark Songs is like wanted to know, are paradigms like skill trees? So it doesn't quite. I mean, it sounds a little bit like, yeah. Once you get one
Skill
choice, and
bushes.
then it opens into,
Yeah.
yeah. I was
So
gonna
like
say
yeah, it doesn't
so
branch out like super straight or super, like this, but
it's
it
more of a
is a cluster of
vast.
abilities. And there are some, right, that are gated behind other choices, right? So there are some that say like you have to have this prerequisite,
Okay, so
but
there are dependencies, yeah, in the system.
yeah, but they're usually further down, right? So you probably want to take a couple of the early ones first before you sort of go straight up that.
Right, because I mean, much like in real life, you can start out learning to shoot, a little gun. It's
Yeah,
probably not going to be easiest if you want to start with like a sniper rifle. That takes a
right.
little bit more practice, training, skill,
Yeah.
etc. So
Yeah,
that
so like one of
totally.
the one of the things that we were trying to avoid is that like in certain games the character building in creation has a different sort of point value system than it does when you're advancing. So in some games it actually benefits you to sort of make your character the best what they're going to be the best at very early, and then you'll spend the rest of the time just sort of pushing
Getting.
little things around the bottom or whatever, because it's so much more beneficial or min maxy, right, to make your character exactly how you want them in the beginning. But what we decided is like, no, we'll just sort of your character starts off, it'll be unique when you make them, but the points are the same no matter if you buy it during character creation or whether you buy it
Okay.
later. So there's no benefit to you to like sort of spend all of your points in one thing if it means you're going to be super deficient in others. So it feels very organic when you grow, and you're capped at like 4 attribute and 4 skills. So there's always going to be room to grow as you advance.
I do like that, because that's one thing that you see a lot of people fall in that trap, especially with like D&D, where they're like, no, I've invested like too much over here, so like I'd love to branch into this, but like I'm gonna keep following this
Right.
line because like
Right.
you know I'm
Like the
mostly
pull the pull to get 22 strength, right, is always going
yeah.
to be stronger than like bumping my wisdom up by 1 to 11 or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, you're like, well, this gives me, more armor class, and it makes me hit harder, and it does
Yeah,
this. So like everything else is clearly a suboptimal choice. Monks have it worse. Yes, monks do have
right.
it worse. Once you get stuck in monk, you can't multiclass. We need to go. Otherwise, you're less stunning in the end.
Yeah.
But
So we're
yeah.
trying to also avoid like the trap of you make certain choices, and so like you have to keep going in order for it to be worth it. Um,
There's a
there's
bunch of
infinite.
interoperability among the various
Yeah,
skills and features and stuff that each character can get. Seems like you've
yeah.
really worked hard on making it. God, I feel like I'm in corporate speak here. I'm making them cross-functional.
which is fine. But if you like, I would say like there's no mistakes, right, in Subversion, um, because there's so many different ways to solve every problem. It's never going to feel like, oh shucks, like I'm not good at this one thing, therefore I'm useless, right? There's always different ways to solve problems. There's always different ways to go about it. So it's going to feel like your character is organic and
I mean, and,
you know,
and and it's kind of right there in the name too, like subversion, right? So there are numerous ways to subvert expectations, to subvert societies, or in this case, the oppressive world around you. And
yeah,
going with kind of the obvious solution may not always be the best course of action, anyways. Like if you've all geared up for full, we're going in frontal combat, then like your enemy maybe has noticed you amassing a force that's about to storm their headquarters. But,
exactly.
if you've kind of gotten some, oh, well, I've got this one guy and he's really good at hacking in, he's going to shut down the thing. Kind of expect that maybe, but then you have other people who have been charming their way in through an alternate method,
Yes,
getting in with the right folks and just being generally charming. And so you've gotten yourself several back doors into your thing. And like
right,
that is what I love about like cyberpunk. Like there's no one way to stick it to the man.
right,
You can you can
exactly.
you can stick it to the man from any angle.
Yes, we have one of our early play tests. The community that the players built was a foodie community, right? So their whole deal was like they make good food that people like love to come to the community and buy. And their whole thing was like we need to stop the food inspectors from coming in and ruining everything. So like they weren't trying to like go in and kill anybody. They weren't trying to like rescue hostages. They were just trying to stop the food inspector from doing their job. And like that was the whole thing that we did, and it ended up being super super fun. So yeah, there's
Oh,
endless stories you can tell.
I love that. We got a food commune because we just want to feed the homeless, but they've criminalized that, and like we don't think that's right, so we're gonna feed them anyway. But
Right,
if someone could just like get rid of that guy who comes around and
right.
is like, hey, you need to pour bleach on your food, and you're like, yeah, no, I totally did, yeah.
Yeah. So they ended up blackmailing her, like finding out that she was sort of shady on the side back in the day, and yeah, it was yeah. Those are the sort of outside the box things that work really
She
well in
used to
Subversion.
take these bribes, and if you give her the right bribe, then you can have a whole dumpster full of food and wheel it wherever
Exactly.
you want.
So they
Yeah,
ended up bribing her and keeping the bribes going, which is not like a traditionally like good thing to do, but also like they're getting to keep
but the
providing food to
goal,
everybody, and right,
yeah,
yeah,
the end goal is accomplished. And like,
right,
when that becomes a problem later, when she starts to ask for, well, I've been doing this for a while and inflation is real, so you're gonna have to pay me more in this bribe. Then you can make a choice all over again.
exactly,
Um,
just so.
Yeah. So that kind of so you did mention that they built a kind of farming community there. So themes of community are very prevalent throughout this. So you're trying
Yeah,
to build your communities there that are kind of coming together to rise up into these rebellions. Um, so how would you say you envision players kind of embracing that particular theme because like you said everyone can be so unique.
yeah. So as far as community goes, like community is actually what you start building, right? So session zero, after you talked about like your expectations and what sort of things you expect and what sort of things you don't want in the game, the very next step is you're going to be building your community together, right? So you start off talking about what kind of community is this? Is this a neighborhood? Is this a convoy of food trucks? Is this a corporate enclave where you're pushing back up against your middle manager? Like what sort of what are you building here? And then you would create people within that community, you'd create values within that community, you'd create backgrounds, and so your community really comes alive And then once that's set, then you start to make your characters as people who would fit in the midst of this community. And when you go out and you act, right, you're not only trying to take care of your own values and make sure that you're true to your own values, but then you also have to worry about, am I stepping on the toes of my community as I'm doing this, right? When I get back home and they go, hey, how'd it go? Well, it went pretty good, but I ended up,
You know how we said that we weren't gonna let anyone know where
right,
we were staying? Well, I
right,
accidentally let someone know.
yeah, exactly, right. Like
I
I
led
ended up,
them. I led them right to us.
I told them it would be okay to put a cell phone tower right in the middle of whatever. So yeah, you have to really balance, like, what you're getting out of it, what you want to accomplish with the values of yourself and your friends and your community.
I really like that too, because again, that kind of drives the narrative of you're not a lone operative. You can be, but you're not a lone operative out there in the world. The power of the many is greater than the power of one, and always will be. Um, and I'm gonna interrupt myself for a second. Hi guys, sorry I didn't tell you that I was interviewing Shadowrun people. I'll be doing that for the next little while. Please tune in. He's in chat. And
Listen,
he's like, I don't know if I'm more mad at you or more mad at Opti for not telling me. So that's my beloved Shadowrun contact that I work with
oh,
at MomoCon.
we've
Uh,
chatted a couple of times, I guess. Hello. I don't know that I know Thon Arca. Maybe I would know you if
his
I
name
had
is Guy, like literally.
Guy. Oh, I think I've chatted with Guy. Yes. Hello,
He's
Guy.
he's a cool guy. Guy.
You are a cool guy.
But yeah, I accidentally napped today. It's fine, everybody. But yeah, I
And
I
Opti did not sleep very well last night with the Kickstarter coming out today.
no. So speaking of the Kickstarter, so I dropped it in the tweet, but let me go ahead and drop it in chat here for anybody who hasn't checked it out. Let me learn how to copy paste. Drop that in chat there, and you can go ahead and kind of check that out at your leisure. Um, but you have already exceeded your goal. So anyone who backs now, it's funded, guys. It was funded really quickly.
Yeah.
4 hours, 32 minutes, and 34 seconds. But who was counting?
4 hours, it funded 200%. I think it got funded completely in like
Oh
32
yeah, that is what that says.
minutes or something like that.
Wow, that's
But
even
yeah,
that's
it's almost, what are we at now? 20.
25,000 ish.
Yay. Yay. Almost 250% funded.
Yeah,
Go Gadget Kickstarter.
yeah, and honestly, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with supply chain issues, like the fact that you're still able to offer this at such a reasonable price, $60 for the hardcover, like that is steal for what you've got going on here, because it's a
Yes, that's what I would expect to pay for like a D&D book, and I'll be honest, I don't think we can produce them at D&D quantities, but we're I don't know, we're trying to do our best to give you like a solid project that it's going to last a long time. So we're not just going to like make this one and then ditch it, right? We've already got a number of people writing adventures for us, so it's going to be continue to be supported in the next couple of years. In fact, I was
Are
gonna
you
ask you to do something
uh,
for us if you get the time.
are you doing are you planning on doing, I know it's a lot of work. Are you planning on putting together like a organized play type campaign for people at conventions?
Yes, that is absolutely. It's a lot of work, yes,
Yes.
but also that's what we like the most about it. So we're really excited to do it. Right, it's going to be a little hard to do this year, but we still have 3 different adventures being run at Origins and Gen Con this year. So it's something that we're super passionate about. And for the living campaign that we'll do is we'll have a central community that everybody is a part of, and so we'll sort of go
All
from
right,
there.
you've got me sold. Living campaigns, living communities, like that's my jam as far as like organized play goes, because
Yeah,
that's where everyone out there, you all in the community, will be able to, put your mark on the world,
yeah,
and it becomes something that you're invested in with your friends. You travel around, you tell stories about the wacky shit your characters do, and like it just becomes like these core memories, and you're like, well,
Yes.
remember that Subversion game that we played back in Gen Con 2024? When your
Yes.
character really went off the rails, and I was like, shoot me in the face. It'll be fine. I promise. Shoot me in the face.
One of the things that we've learned is that shared experiences really bring people together. And it's not just like what you said, like you can be at a table with somebody and having these adventures, right? But it's also when you go other places and you say, like, oh, hey, there was this game I played. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, like, Curse of Strahd or whatever. And somebody goes, oh, I played that. That was great. And here's what happened in mine. And they go, oh, here's what happened in mine. So like these common touch points, if we can create those, that will deepen the community for Subversion, and that's the sort of stuff that we're looking to do. So continue to support it. Yes, I know that adventures don't sell as well. We are just assuming that we're going to lose money on the adventures, but it's going to be like a marketing thing, right? Like that's
Yeah.
fine. It will be an expense that we have to do in order to bring people shared experiences and to bring people together and to make the game more appealing. So
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, and adventures can sell well, like
yeah,
especially as you've got this it's a newer system, newer game here. So every player that sits down and plays it is now a new potential GM for you,
yep,
and then all of their friends that play it with them, and then all of them are going to want to share this wonderful adventure with their own friends. So hopefully that'll
yes.
kind of get some of them going. I'm ever an optimist about organized play systems.
I also am an optimist, and I should also say that we are going to be releasing the rules under some sort of open gaming license. So if you want to take the rules and make your own game, go for it.
Ooh, a
And if you
community
wanted to,
content program.
yes, exactly. And if you wanted to do stuff for Subversion in the world of Neo Babylon, we're also going to encourage you to do that. We're not going to take a cut off the top. You just sell your stuff and make your stuff until your heart's content, and we'll support you in doing that.
Yeah, make your stuff, sell your stuff, tell people that you can play all of the official stuff right in with your stuff, and then all the stuff goes together. And, as a small company, you're not contributing to the man.
Right. That's one of our favorite parts.
Yeah, I mean, not that most tabletop publishers are not the man as it would be. That's
They are not.
basic basically just the one of them right now.
Yeah, yeah. Now that's not to say, and it gets back to why we started Fraggin Unicorns in the first place. That's not to say that every indie publisher is positive or having a positive effect just because they aren't the man. They're
No.
just you're right. So like it's important for us. Like, no, we don't want to exploit people. No, we don't want to do things just for money, but also be the best fragging people we can, the coolest people we can for everybody to be.
The best fragging unicorns you can.
Absolutely.
All
And
right.
if that makes us a unicorn, if that makes us a mythical creature, that's fine. We'll do our best to
All
to
right.
be
So
mythical and awesome.
the one question that I said I was gonna do, and then we've got time for just a couple more. So where did that name come from? Fragging unicorns.
Okay, so that's a story.
Yeah.
When I first started,
It's such a memorable
um,
name.
it is, and it's got a memorable story. Once I tell you, you'll never forget it. But once I started freelancing for Shadowrun, I remember, this is not to slag on any particular person, but they had an email list, like an email forum type of Google list or whatever. I don't know. Google, I forgot what they're called. Anyway, there's this thing that's still going on. It's an email chat that goes back and forth. So I hopped on there and I was like, hey guys, what's going on? I was like, all this wide-eyed excitement of somebody who loves this thing and is now all of a sudden getting to play in this sandbox. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. Hey guys, have you ever thought about this and this and this and this? And I was so excited. It brought all the fanboy energy to it. And the response was like, stop talking. like do your own homework. And I was like, that made me feel sad. So there was a couple of folks on there who weren't like that, like, hey, sorry that happened. Like, not everybody's like that. So I decided like participating in that wider group, as a newbie is probably not what I want to be doing right now. So I made a little side group and said like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for being cool, or people that I knew before I got involved. And we sort of had this side Facebook group where we would chat and share ideas and whatnot. So it grew over time to about 8 or 10 people. And we really started like working together as a team and finishing each other's books and working together on projects. It was really, really something cool. And then one day, one of the guys came back and he was having a really bad day. And he goes, "Man, you know what I would love?" And I was like, "Unicorns?" And he goes, "Yes, Opti, Fraggin' Unicorns." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, that would be a great name for a band." And so we spent about 2 weeks like creating this fictional band called Fragging Unicorns, and like we would describe the other people, right? Like, and other people would describe us, and we
Is
had got
it
this band,
is it a
and then we
ska band? Is there trumpets?
it's a punk band, but we could
You
totally add
can
some
always add
horns,
trumpets.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we ended up like putting that in a couple of Shadowrun books, right? As like the Fragging Unicorns. Like who basically was like a front for Shadowrunners. Like and when they would come to a town, they would play the band, and then they would do their thievery on the side. But it just that's what the group became known as well. Like we changed the group name to the Fragging Unicorns, and like the
I
group
love that.
eventually sort of broke up and did their own thing. And when we decided to do our own gaming company, I went back and I said, "Hey guys, I want to do this. Like, what do you think if we call the name Fragging Unicorns, in honor of the band?" And they were like, "Yeah, do it. That's amazing." So that's where it came from. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. All right. All right then. So if there is anything from this conversation that you want people to take and tell their friends about this game, like what do you feel is like kind of the key things that people should take from this? Um, I know. There's a 2-page spread if everybody wants that.
I would say if you take anything from this conversation, it's don't do what else everybody else has been doing. Just do what you want to do and do it like in a really kind way. That's what I want you to know. But if you're talking about just this
For
game,
the game.
it's fight back, right? Like think about this game not just as another game that you play, but as a sort of training manual for pretending to fight back in real life, and then maybe one day, right, we'll get a chance to push back against the unjust authorities in your own life. But also, if you've got like tons of money or $60, go pledge on our Kickstarter, which launched today, and we'd be so thankful.
Which does feel a little bit. Yes. So to Mark's question, yes, Opti was co-designer of Shadowrun 6th World Edition and
Mm-hmm.
Shadowrun Anarchy. So that is
Mm-hmm.
where you've probably seen that before. But yeah,
Yes.
so just want to thank you again so much for being on today, taking the time, for being patient with me also while we struggled with technical difficulties, which is the real reason why we haven't gotten to the mega corporation state of this
Right.
world yet. If technology would behave, we totally would have been there, and you all know it.
Yep.
So I hope that everyone checks out the game, and whether you think it's the best thing for you or not, maybe share it with your friends so that we can all have some fun practicing to kick the man down when he tries to take his throne.
Indeed.
All
Thank
right.
you so much for having me on, Jenny. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this has been a delight. And thanks to Rem, of course, who's somewhere in chat for setting this up. If you haven't checked out any of their shows, you can find those on the well, I think Rem has their own channel, Rem Alternus, but also Roll with Rem on the Gen Con TV channel
Mm-hmm.
on one of those days of the week that I've promptly forgotten. But yeah, and this is the Designer's Den. I'm Jenny Loveday. You can find me on the internet at Jenny Loveday on all of the things. And find Opti. Where can they find you online aside from that Twitter handle below?
You can find me at our Fragging Unicorns Facebook group, which you can go to Facebook and search for Fragging Unicorns. We have a Discord server, which I have no idea how to communicate that via mouth.
It's yeah, I was gonna say it's not that is not on the thing that I'm copying from, so
That's okay. You can probably find it. And then you can go to fraggingunicorns.com, but probably more importantly is go to Kickstarter and search for Subversion. That's where we are.
yep. All right, so we drop that link once more for anybody who joined, and they're Google groups, by the way. So you were on the right track there.
Google Groups. That's what it was.
Google Groups, which I hate with a passion, because there's always that one person who has no sense that this is going to several hundred people, and you shouldn't send one-word emails over and over again. Thanks. But anyways, that said, all the links are there in chat aside from the Discord, which you could find through the thing and whatever. But check it out, and yeah, until next time, everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.
Thanks. I don't know where my ending thing is.